It's a pleasure being here with this panel. We have great representation here. In fact, to my left, I have Professor Saxena and Professor Murthy representing the science and engineering side on the education standpoint. And on the right, I have Mr. Pandit and Dr. Chips, as your card was saying. So and we had this conversation what to call him. Okay. Representing the application of the science and the technology that is coming out of various institutes. So to start off this conversation, so we've got about 40-45 minutes for this session. We plan to have a debate within ourselves for about 30 minutes and then open it up for question and answers in the last 10 to 15 minutes. So yesterday in the evening, over dinner, I was talking to Siddharth, and he put across a very interesting point. He's saying the world is about the algebra of science, engineering, and then technology, or what is now called innovation. You need all three in any given point in time to actually be able to produce services or offer anything of any kind to an end consumer in that manner. In today's day and age, as we stand today, we are all focused on the innovation side of it, what we call technology. We all talk of the startups, we all talk of this cool, funky services which are coming up, and that's where the brands are being built, the values are being built, the money lies. But those will not be possible if the engineering wasn't in place, and the engineering can't happen if the basic science wasn't done. Yeah. Now, over a period of time, and as we look at it, what we are seeing is that now we're all focused on the last part, which is the technology or innovation side of it. That's where the pizzazz and the jazz and everything comes into play. Yeah. And we are hearing lesser and lesser of the engineering aspect, and even more so of the science side of things. So I actually want to kick this off by first asking, a question to you, Siddharth. What's your view? I mean, you are in Cambridge, you are a physicist and an anthropologist by training, and you're teaching in that area as well, in both those fields, and that's a very interesting space. What are you seeing? Is there enough talent coming into play? Is there enough people who are opting for these kind of things? Is there enough research which is being focused on? Because without the research coming out, the basic science coming out, well, engineers can't take forward the next step of actually making a tool out of which then can be applied and creating a service around it.
Sure. So the one way to think about it, to more or less repeat what you said, to reiterate, that if you think about this algebra of science, engineering, and technology, is thinking about in a way that you have ingredients which scientists create, find, and describe. Then you have the engineers who create the recipes. And then you have the innovation part where the menus itself are created and the consumer then is able to order the best feast. And if we don't have the right ingredients, which we take it for granted in today's society, we are kind of stuck in many ways to take things forward, or limited if not stuck. And what we can very clearly see that the focus on how education itself develops, which is largely training people to be creative. But what are they creating? What is the material of that creation? Where the reservoir of that creation? We're seeing there's a retreat globally, and certainly in case of India. Because we think that market itself can drive science in the end. An example, and two examples I can give you, very brief ones. One is that if it was market-driven, market not necessarily driven to capital markets, I'm talking about need of people. Cancer is something which is very important, and there's a huge need for it, there's a huge amount of money being put in it. But it became a technological solution-based thing, and we are kind of stuck as a society to find solutions there easily. Because it's the scientific research, because cancer is not a disease. Cancer is a phenomena for which you need doctors and scientists to be working in tandem all the time at each particular case. An even bigger question well, it's not bigger because people have to live to do the next things, is the energy thing. We are looking for energy solutions. And the key thing that comes there is the fact that very little work has been done on finding materials, I mean physical materials, which can be used where, for example, silicon. I'll just give you, that's one example. Silicon is heart of all the technologies we have. In 1897, electrons was discovered in Cambridge by my colleague J.J. Sampson, colleague 100 years ago. However, the point is that led to the development of electronics as we know today. But we are there because we just still use silicon. What is the next stage as a society, whether it's engineering or whether it's cancer, whether it's building new houses, what research has been put into materials, and not research in terms of output of research, not the papers and solutions, but the people who are able to think about materials. So I wanted to answer that question, that we have not just the idea of what is missing in terms of physical entities, but the ways of thinking that are needed, and investment into science is the source where we need to really pay attention to.
So that's interesting. So I took away two things from that. So one is you're saying there is a question of the quantity of people focusing on research, and there is also a question from the ways of thinking, which is the quality question in that manner, which goes into it. Okay. Yeah. But we'll come back to this one. Dr. Murthy, coming to you. So if I remember, PhD in earthquake engineering, and administrator of
academics
at IIT Jodhpur, and that's a hardcore engineering school. I mean, everyone knows in IIT. My personal experience, as I've seen it, and we were sharing it before, so I've been going and visiting IIT Bombay and other places for innovation summits that they have, and I'm seeing a lot of graduates wanting to be entrepreneurs, right? But they're also all wanting to be Me Too entrepreneurs, and that's becoming a challenge. It's and because so I'm an engineer by education, and in my day and age, most of my class actually went into the Sun Microsystems and places like that, into the engineering field per se. And very few of us were the black sheep who actually did not go into engineering but went into other places. Yeah. But now, so I've actually seen it the other way around. I'm seeing lesser people go into, or hearing more lesser people go into advanced studies or getting into the engineering core per se, but more into the applied side of life, where the value is per se. What's your view?
Yeah, surely. When you look at today's academia, the student alone is actually wanting to go in the direction of innovation. The teacher is not. So that's the first gap area that we are seeing. Very few teachers are actually taking to innovation, and enterprise. Now, why is that happening? Because we haven't matured enough along the line of education research, and research has the basic, applied, and targeted research, and then the game of technology, and then innovation. I don't think we've grown or matured along this entire value chain of converting our basic science into a technology product, and eventually then doing better on technology and innovating. We over the years, as Professor Saxena just said, we've been very happy just doing papers. So on the technology readiness level, we are stopping at 3. The valley of death from 3 to 7, we haven't walked that valley of death at all in any of these institutes. And hence, clearly, we're wanting to do anything meaningful in terms of technology products. Whatever little is happening by the students left alone to themselves is a non-technology enterprise or innovation, and not a technology product.
So just to take that further, so there is a larger focus on the application of technology in that manner, more than actually creating the technology in that manner.
Yes.
Okay. And the other point you raised is that while you're seeing teachers are not moving towards that side, but the students are more and more there. Okay. But from a teacher availability, again, it's a quantity and quality question in that manner.
Sure.
Do we have enough talent to actually even work towards creating a meaningful impact on our educational system, to build that either science or technology focus in that manner?
Surely, definitely today's India is running short of 70% teachers. And more so in the last 25 years, when you see graduates, only 2% of them coming back to technology, either as higher education or as technologists in the industry, then you really wonder who are going to be our teachers. We don't have a set of teachers who are good in their subject today. We have those who came out of compulsion of not being able to make it elsewhere, or thinking that there is employment available here, so let me fill that gap.
So it's not being done because I want to do it, it's being done because I have to do something in that manner, or more or less. We might be generalizing it, but in principle in that manner. Okay. So that's a problem on the science and the engineering standpoint. Okay. Now, but on the application side of it, life is good. I mean, we are doing a lot, and I'm part of the application side of life, of the technology and the innovation. This is the best time to be living in, well, it could change 100 years from now, it could be the best time, but as of now, this is the best time over the last a couple of decades to be in this space, especially when you're talking application of technology to create great solutions. Now, Ravi, I know at KPIT you work on various technology solutions and you've got a lot of IP created around that, but it's application of what has come out in different forms and manner. Where are you seeing, do you as KPIT or organizations like yourselves, do you see a gap or a problem which you're hitting from because now we don't have enough research or enough engineering behind it?
I see. Some of the initial work that we have done has been in the area of application of technology. Let me go a step back. Our area of work is automotive and our area of work is energy, because a lot of new work in automotive is on clean transportation, which actually converges to energy. Some of the initial work that we did has been in the area of, so to say, application of technology. But you realize very quickly that if you have to solve some really serious problems, you have to get into science. And that is what we have been doing in the last few years. We have been working with national institutions. Now, one of the things to realize in any area which tries to connect application or technology to science, one of the things to realize is that you don't partner with institutions, you partner with people. So, and it took us like 5 years to find out the right 2 or 3 guys, right 2 or 3 professors with whom to partner. And if you can find such a professor, then you would typically find that they have a team of students working with them who are amongst the brightest, who work among the highest. And what has changed in my opinion now is that knowledge is, it's omnipresent. You can access it through Google anytime. So, you look at, say our work, as I said, is on energy storage and multiple materials which are required for energy storage. And you can easily see that, okay, in the last 5 years, you see more and more work done in these kind of chemistries or these kind of physical properties, etc. And hopefully you get to a stage where you are first cracking a problem which was addressed in papers abroad in 3 years ago, then you come across with something like 1 year ago, now you're talking about something latest paper, and then you hope that the next one will be yours. I mean, that's the way the catch-up is, right? So in my opinion, the issue is finding out a worthwhile problem to solve, because I believe that there are enough worthwhile problems to solve now. Finding out the people who are passionate about those problems and bringing those problems into stream of technology so that you can build an application which is relevant. A lot of the application that you currently see is in the domain of e-commerce. I don't want to belittle that in any way, but I believe that at some point in time we have to go beyond that. And actually, if you have to address the true problems of the world, are there in the area of transportation, they are in the area of energy, they are in the area of healthcare, and a whole bunch of issues. And I think that is where you finally get down to the physics of things. I believe that there is a need to do that. I believe that there is a possibility of doing that in India. I agree that there are not too many people available with whom you can work, but you don't need to work with too many people. You need to work with 2 or 3 people. That's good enough.
The challenge would become if there are 100 KPITs finding those 2 people.
Yes,
so,
luckily
the
we are not
challenge
there.
becomes there. So, because the other side of the challenge from an Indian standpoint is that there are not 100 KPITs.
Yes.
So we need those as well. So that's another, the problem will change. The context of the problem will change.
That is true.
Yeah. Now, Chip, you've been head of innovation for Osram, a very large lighting major, and you worked on LED, organic LEDs, even before the world knew that it could be commercialized and bought out that way. Yeah. And now you're heading out, you're helping people do business entrepreneurship or startups in that manner. And again, and most of the work, even as I see it, is mostly on the application of technology in different ways and making it, creating value for it for someone to use so that you can create economic value around it. Yeah. This change from looking at innovating to solve real problems, like you were saying on the energy field in that manner, or saying actually creating that technology and then taking it to market, because I think that's a large gap which goes unfilled. You can have the science created and you have a component created, but what can that component do it's a different way of thinking which comes into play. Yeah. Are you seeing a lot of that happening here, around here?
Thank you, Varun. So that's a great question. My life experience so far has been from the science, all the things we talked about, of the semiconductor, all the way to making LED light bulbs. And so today, we are at this point in time where we are going from solving technical, scientific problems to actually solving system problems, engineering, innovation, and application. So it's actually the perfect shape of the S-curve that we have just fully migrated. And we are now coming at that steep point of application. So where it all started, it was just a question of having light, a replacement for a light bulb. But today, what's happening is that same light bulb, because it's made with a semiconductor, can actually transmit Wi-Fi signals. It can actually affect healthcare, a person's well-being. It can help plants to grow. It can do a whole bunch of things we didn't expect before. And so the innovation that's coming from this very basic technology is really dramatically exploding the market. And today in India, with the smart cities and so on, you're seeing this discussion about how do you integrate all of this in a macro system as opposed to just an engineering system. And so this transformation, I think, is critical. You need the science as a foundation. You need the engineering as a part of converting the science into something practical and useful that people can feel and experience. And then you need the whole innovation so that you can have a value proposition that makes this whole thing sustainable, economically sustainable. So I think you need all these elements to play together.
So, hearing all of you, so there are, I think, two things here, okay? And as we see the world today, my personal views, I'm seeing the engineering and the application of that, the technology kind of merging. It's kind of becoming fuzzy in some manner. But the science has kind of stayed behind, or is not spoken about in that manner. And when I say engineering being merged with the innovation or the application of technology it's more about engineers doing it, not about engineering a solution around it in that manner. Okay? So there's a difference in that. Yeah. If we were to go forward, looking forward now, because the other, a lot of the work that is happening now and the innovation, the value being created and the names we speak of are all based on past innovations. And when I say scientific innovation in that manner. Okay? And if you don't have enough innovation happening, well, what's going to happen next? Are we just going to incrementally improve the whole silicon world and do more and more with better coding and better, thing? Because we will hit a bottleneck at some point in time. Then it'll all become a me too. Yes. Yeah. So how do we get that going? Where do we need to look at? What are the changes required from an investment standpoint? Could be investment, could be in people, money, time, or any other aspect to actually get the science back on track. More so from an Indian context. And I would look at this, to both of you to kind of give your views on this. Starting with you.
Extremely valid and very important, critical sort of a policy decision and thinking is needed. And continuing with the same theme of the silicon. And so, for example, if you look at the silicon world, which is fantastically has delivered a lot, so where do we go next? Where do we go next? We're looking at things, if you're scientifically inclined, you'll know that silicon has a fundamental barrier. It requires 1 electron volt of energy to move the next electron, meaning whatever that number is, you have to meet that number. And the next level of technology will require a different set of materials which have much lower, including the organics particularly. But since the global infrastructure is so heavily invested into silicon, for them to disrupt this from point of view of everyday employment of people, including the investment made into training of people, is a very big problem. And that's what prevents, in many ways, movements. So one of the ways of thinking about it is that if you look at countries like India, and you said the Indian context, but neighboring countries also, that investment here and that locking into the old way of doing things is actually much smaller. So India and this region provides that particular investment opportunity. In fact, it's a lower entry barrier in that sense to take the things to the next stage. And we can clearly see that it would require, at this stage, the large institutional, and the government investment to be the leader, let's say. But an enlightened and informed, not a traditional style of government infrastructure building. It requires, so what we need is investment, in my view, coming from large institutions, which include large private sector, ones who are almost like governments, as well as the governments themselves, but them also to refine the way they engage in how we take these things forward.
Yeah, from an engineering standpoint, I look at three major changes required for us. The first one clearly is people. When I look at teachers today, they get all the 3 degrees in a row and then become faculty members. And we are talking of a technology institute in which the faculty member has not seen the industry. And this is the norm. There's an exception, a rare exception always. Second issue that we're looking at is faculty members in that same people sector, staff members. Today, a faculty member prides doing everything on the campus, doesn't allow staff member to really become a professional to serve the needs of the academics, either in terms of programs or in running of the institute. So we have to empower our staff members, non-teaching faculty, non-teaching employees. Third is students. When I look at students, their hands-on component. For example, when both of us were students in the IIT, our engagement hours were 32 to 36, depending on which semester you are in. And today we have hit 15 to 18 hours. We are mimicking the US model in which the student is inspired to come in and learn. Here the parents are inspired to send the child, the student is not inspired to learn. So by reducing the number of hours of technology input to the student, I don't know whether we are really giving away a degree called the Bachelor of Technology. Second aspect is, indeed, the technology education system needs a major overhaul, which means earlier we were spending all our energy with teacher in the center, not the student. Time has come to become outcome-based and keep the student in the center. That major paradigm shift has to happen in today's context in the Indian system of education. Third one is, as I already alluded to it, we have to integrate industry into these technical education institutes. Otherwise, it's of no meaning and no value to just read a book and then send the graduates out to the institute. No point.
You want to add something?
Yeah, just a very small point.
This is a very important point. We are missing on it very badly.
And complementing what was said and just refining one point, that the biggest gap that I've seen emerging in India and also in neighboring countries is that the number of teachers and professors are not only disengaged with the industry, but they're also disengaged with the latest research practices globally.
Sure.
So there is a disconnect at 2 levels. Sure. And because that comes together, industry needs the latest things.
Sure.
The research is not part of the global community. They're literally going down to teaching at almost high school level of intensive teaching, not enough time to think, and that's why the system becomes teacher-centered rather than student-centered.
In fact, just to add to that, today, automotive technologies, if you count up all the IITs together, there are 16 running today, going 24 soon. In 16 IITs, the number of faculty members centered to automotive technology is 13. So we have abandoned automotive technologies when it is 19% of India's manufacturing GDP. How can it be that an IIT system completely looks away from manufacturing? This is one example. Most examples are like this, and that's what prompts Indian industry to run away outside to any expo and get technology in the next half hour. By the return flight, the technology comes in.
But Professor,
so we aren't engaged hands-on.
So let me put this problem a different way. Why would a student want to do this? See, because, and I'm putting it down because here you would have, Chips and Ravi saying, look, I'll give you 1.6 crores, that thing. You come in and work for me. Why would you want to do engineering or basic research for that matter, or scientific research for that matter?
I think the truth is,
how do you incentivize people to actually get back into it?
See, today, if I look at the education system, 50% of our students come from modest homes. They need to take back a salary home. They need to fend the father and the mother and sister's marriage and so on. The realities are still the same, which means that if you can give him norm of technology education, he gets employed, if not in Tier 1, Tier 2 manufacturing industry, he takes home a steady salary. We aren't empowering that, enabling that student when he graduates or she graduates to really have a steady career. All the time we are dreaming of Einstein and Bill Gates and that 1.6 crore salary. We're not serving the needs of the primary student. The norm of the student is being neglected.
See, so I have to bring back another point. So
but may I just add to that? So
I want to make it us versus them right now.
I know you do. I'm trying to actually lower that.
I have a point to what you just said.
Just the point is that with science, basic sciences, the story is slightly different. It's not completely contradictory. science doesn't require the large paradigm change in that sense. It requires, in fact, we don't want large people, we don't need large people, we need quality people, smaller, very well targeted programs within science who are globally connected, globally competitive, globally leading. And that investment that's needed for that is actually much smaller. And then there's a question of culture. That among scientists, the salary is not incentivization. It is, of course, to a level, but it's not to that. Because they see where the supply chain is. So you have to explain to a scientist from the very beginning, a student who's interested in where their careers are going. And they make the choice. Yeah? And that is also missing in how we talk to students. Right.
So actually the supply chain comment you made is very good segue to what Professor Murthy was also saying, is that we have to really think in terms of even this education system as much as a business or value proposition. Who are the stakeholders? So a lot of students go, as you pointed out, so that they can get a valuable income and manage their lives. But on the other hand, businesses need these students to run their businesses. They're equally a stakeholder and partner. And so therefore, there has to be a better connection between the academic world and the industrial world to create the market pull and for industry to feel some stake in creating this resource for their own future, for their own sustainability. So I think that's a very important part of the whole equation.
You had one of
I think now the government of India is talking about innovation and 10,000 crores possibly going into new innovations, and I begin to worry a little bit. I feel that world over, the governments have invested in core science in terms of improving the university system, having larger number of research projects going into science, which is where the money of the government should be going. And I believe it has multiple secondary and tertiary effects. World over, the results have shown that governments are not good in making commercial bets for innovation. And you find that companies who have done well have not been given any venture money by any government anywhere. And sometimes I worry that our 10,000 crores are going to go in this way, which is what should not happen. So, and I see quite a few bright students from our universities going in large numbers now to Korea, to China, if not to Germany and to the US. And the amount of money that countries like Korea and China are investing in science is humongous. And I believe that considering the fact that we have a large young population of bright young students, if only we can create some investment in these areas, we will do much, much better than them. I think we have to keep our focus of governmental investments very sharply targeted at science and not at commercial innovation.
Further up the value chain, go at the core of
so
it.
If I may add to that, actually, is the experience in the US where we have, particularly in the lighting area with the government and the Department of Energy, there's programs that fund fundamental research, product development, and market introduction, 3 different phases. And then as the science has kind of grown on the S-curve, we have seen that the shift in relative allocation of resources has shifted from the back end, which is the science and technology, the core, to the products, and now to much more to the market introduction. And with the very careful targeting of where the money goes. So I'm all for what you said about not overemphasizing the government programs. But on the other hand, if it's very well engineered and very well targeted, you can get great results. So for example, in the lighting industry, there's probably reasonable acceptance that the LED lighting infrastructure in the US is very advanced. They have spent approximately $100 million over the course of 10 years and got those results. By comparison, China is spending $1 billion per year and still not at that level of result. So it's not about the money, it's about how it's organized and how carefully and diligently you provide the incentives. for each phase.
So, taking a couple of points that you guys said, and I have a different view on a couple of aspects here. So one, so if you look at it, the number of people who are doing, students who are doing science in schools have dropped. Right? It is going more towards the, the accounting or the social side, and other side, the business side of it.
More in the US than in India.
But it's changing. Even if I see it here, you have a lot more students, and I'm seeing my friends' children and other things, moving more away from that. I mean, it might be perceptive, but it seems to be moving in that direction. The second is that, so I go to college and I'm graduating, and I'm in a premier institute like IIT, and I'm being fought over by, the day zero recruitment companies, and we're all fighting for that, which is not into engineering, which are not into any of those things, but they are into more on consulting, financials, and some technology application, some technology companies in that manner. Okay. And the students are looking for that because at the end of the day, it's a monetary benefit, like you said, you look for that. So how do we look at incentivizing? So, because then the partnership work, if you don't have enough people going into the core, be it the science side or the engineering side, and staying in that, and then how do we end up partnering with people is a question that comes into play. So how do you incentivize students to stay in engineering? I mean, how do you make that shift on, because at the end of the day, as a human being, if I'm looking for monetary benefit, and an outcome, it always becomes comparative with the next person. Now, yes, I could be wired and genetically, just more towards being wanting to be interested in researching and developing something, or creating something based on that research. But that's becoming far and few apart now. It's becoming lesser. So how do you actually incentivize people saying, look, there is actually money in this, and there's more money in this? You might just start seeing the switch back. But because we caused the problem.
We are solving the problem.
We always solve the problem.
We can
in fact, there is no problem.
Maybe I can take this question.
Then I can say something.
Yeah. I think one of the things that we need to do is, as an engineering community or a technology community, we have not sensitized the next generation as to what are the grand challenges, what are the excitements, and what are the emoluments. Absolutely. There is a complete lack of information. So today, a typical graduate is looking for a job and not a career. A typical graduate is just looking for some money to go home and not looking for a lifetime game. And we have failed. As institutes, we have failed. Because we ourselves, when I look at ourselves, our first guards, the first set of teachers who were there, were really hands-on with us. We were only 25 in a class, and there were 25 of them, so it's almost one-to-one. Yep. Right? Today we are at 1,000 in a class. In one batch, we are 1,000. And then on that side, it's the same number. That's unfair. That's unfair. I think we are not... See, it's one thing for parents to send their child in at the age of 17 to the institute, whatever inputs they are giving. But I think from our side, preparing them for tomorrow to face the real world, the careers, I think we aren't doing enough on that. So that's one. So collectively, as an institute and as an engineering industry or technology industry, we need to work together and showcase the beauty of engineering and technology, which I think is completely missing in India's context.
So. And that's the point, better put than I was going to say, so I'll add to it. Our experience from Cambridge itself is that in our teaching system, across the board in every subject, apart from the main lecture program, the bigger part of our teaching, much more substantial part of teaching, is having groups of 2 students to 1 professor, weekly, daily, in contact with each other. That's a very important function. In this function, we have to be as good as our students come from. They're the best in the world because they come from the best place in the world, including India. And in this course, we're able to both share the excitement, nurture them and prepare them, and you find that choices are made based on that. That if you're able to convey, and that still links back to what I said earlier, that if you are researching, if the teacher is connected to the global excitement, they convey that excitement back to the teacher. The choices are then informed by that. And majority of the good, the best, will come through that channel. They are best because they are able to do that. They have done that at school level, at the primary school level. They have filtered through that, right? So that they are not simply going to make that choice based on a career. Some of them will, which is good, which is fine. Diversity is another number for you. The Cambridge's physics department, where I teach, 40% of its undergraduate output students end up in financial industry. And they take their problem-solving ability to this, and they're highly in demand.
Quantity.
However, 40% of Cambridge's history graduates also go to the financial industry because the system as a whole is focused on problem solving. So it's not, it's about, they're not just going there to get jobs, because the jobs they will do, the careers they will carry on, are interesting, and they're made interesting to them, and they explain.
But then it seems reasonable that a university should have such a proportion. But for a technology institute
Yes,
to have
absolutely.
80% of our students go away from technology, and in the recent times 95% of them go away from technology, is a shame on us.
Yeah.
You wanted to say something, Chips?
No, I think that it has to be also some sort of, for lack of a better word, I'll say an incentive system or some recognition system, maybe that's an even better word, is that where professors are showing results or where the students are going out and succeeding, those students also should have the sort of feeling of attachment that they pull the professor into their work and into their practical, so that relationship should not just end at that moment where you walk out with a degree. It should be, there's got to be more effort from the institutes or any university for that matter to connect with the students who are in the real world and kind of almost make students feel that there's part of their responsibility is to bring back something interesting to the institute. And so that relationship will become a much more dynamic back and forth. And I think that will slowly build this up. It's a culture that has to be built. It's not instantaneous, obviously. But it's being done all over, and I think it can be done here as well.